You know the eyes, you know the hair, you know that specific kind of frantic, beautiful panic that felt like it could shatter the screen at any second. Gene Wilder became famous for looking like a man who might completely come apart. When audiences watched him, they saw someone balancing delight and alarm in the exact same breath. That chaotic energy looked like pure, natural lightning. It looked like a gift he was simply born with. But you believe something false about the man who made you laugh. The wild, unpredictable genius you saw on screen was not an accident. He was a deeply guarded construction. And the comedy that made him a legend did not start with a joke. It started with a medical sentence that would terrify almost anyone. Before Gene Wilder could exist, a different man had to survive a collapsing world. His father, William Silberman, did not care about applause. He cared about getting out of Russia alive. Following World War I, the old order was breaking apart. William made a hard choice under extreme pressure. He left the chaos behind, crossed into a new country as a Russian Jewish immigrant, and settled in Milwaukee. He did not build a legend there. He built floorboards. He worked as a manufacturer and salesman of novelty items, grinding out a modest, steady life. That stability matters. William faced the outside instability, so his family would not have to. He created the safe ground where his son could eventually afford to take massive emotional risks. The boy who grew up on that ground was named Jerome Silberman. He inherited his father's safe home, but he soon faced a different kind of terror inside it. When Jerome was just 8 years old, a doctor looked at his mother and saw a serious heart condition. The doctor gave the young boy a devastating warning. He told Jerome that he must not upset his mother because upsetting her might actually kill her. Imagine carrying that weight as a child. Ordinary feelings suddenly transformed into extreme danger. A loud noise, an angry outburst, or even acting too rough could have lethal consequences. Jerome learned instantly that his behavior carried life or death stakes. He was no longer just a son. He was put on guard duty, so the boy made a choice. He reached for the only tool he had to relieve the pressure in the room. He tried to make his mother laugh. Gene Wilder later confessed this was the very first time he consciously attempted to make someone laugh. It was not a party trick, and it was not about showing off. It was a desperate, purposeful response to illness. If he could make her smile, the room softened. If she laughed, she was calm, and if she was calm, she was safe. Comedy became his job. It became a way to protect the person he loved most. But this survival tactic came with a heavy cost. He carried a deep guilt about feeling happy while his mother was sick. Even pure joy felt like a betrayal. He learned that love and fear were tied together, and that making someone laugh felt absolutely necessary. That childhood burden never completely left him. When millions of people later watched him on movie screens, they thought they were watching a comedian spinning out of control. They were actually watching a man whose body remembered how to outrun fear by forcing it into laughter. His family saw this sensitive, gifted boy and wanted to help him rise. His mother believed the local Wisconsin schools were not enough to bring out his true potential. She wanted him to have polish and structure. So they sent him away to Black Fox, a military institute in Hollywood. It looked like a door opening to a brighter, tougher future. The plan failed completely. Instead of finding refinement, Jerome found profound cruelty. He was the only Jewish boy at the entire school. His difference was immediately targeted. He faced severe bullying, anti-Semitic harassment, and sexual assault. The institution that was supposed to make him stronger completely broke him down. He did not stay and suffer in silence. After just a few miserable months, he escaped. He went back home to Milwaukee. That rejection could have destroyed a young person, but Jerome used it to narrow his path. The tough, disciplined military route was hostile and dangerous, so he turned toward something completely different. He reconnected with the theater. The stage offered him a place where his sensitivity, his oddness, and his vulnerability were not liabilities. They were assets. The failure of the Hollywood school did not ruin him. It pushed him directly toward the life that would eventually save him. But Jerome knew he needed more than just raw emotion to survive on stage. He needed intense, rigorous control. He traveled to England and enrolled at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. This was a place where physical movement was treated as a crucial part of an actor's craft. He stepped into an environment that demanded perfect balance and timing. He took up fencing. People think of fencing as a polite sport, but it is actually about maintaining grace under a direct threat. You cannot drift. You must stay absolutely alert and alive to distance. Jerome learned this so fast that he became the first freshman to ever win the school's all-school fencing championship. This championship completely changes how you should look at his later movie roles. The public thought his frantic screen energy was loose and accidental. But underneath the wildly flailing arms and the panicked voice, there was a champion fencer. He knew exactly how to carry tension in his muscles and release it at the perfect second. His body was highly trained. He could look like a man falling apart, while the actor inside remained totally precise. He did not stop there, either. He returned to the United States because he wanted even deeper training. He went to HB Studio to study the Stanislavski technique. He wanted to connect his sharp physical control with deep, internal emotional truth. He was carefully building a machine that could deliver a specific kind of vulnerable comedy to the world. There was just one problem left. Jerome Silberman did not sound like the man he was building. He tried imagining the name Jerry Silberman in a production of Macbeth, and it simply fell flat. It sounded too grounded, too everyday, too ordinary. He needed a name that could act as a doorway, a shield, and a promise. He needed a clear line between his private life and his professional public persona. Hiding from the world is about fear, but rebranding is about design. He wanted to design his own entrance, so he stripped the old name away and built a new one entirely out of art. He chose the first name Gene simply because he liked it, pulling it from Eugene Gant, a character written by the author Thomas Wolfe. He chose the last name Wilder out of deep respect for the playwright Thornton Wilder. Together, the words carried a slight lift. They sounded theatrical without being too grand. Gene gave the name a strong, simple anchor, while Wilder hinted at edge, imagination, and a little bit of danger. Jerome Silberman stepped back behind the curtain, and Gene Wilder stepped into the spotlight. The world met a perfectly tuned persona before they ever saw a single performance. Even with the new name, the intense training, and the brilliant persona, he almost lost the role that made him an icon. When director Mel Brooks cast Gene Wilder as Leo Bloom in the movie The Producers, the decision was immediately attacked. A powerful financial backer named Joseph E. Levine watched the early footage and hated what he saw. Levine decided Wilder was completely wrong for the part. He wanted him fired. In the movie business, when the money talks, actors usually disappear. Wilder's career was suddenly hanging over open ground, but Mel Brooks refused to let him go. Brooks looked at the exact same footage and saw genius. Levine wanted a traditional, sturdy comic performer. Brooks wanted something much stranger. He wanted what he called the perfect victim. Brooks knew that the character of Leo Bloom needed to be highly intelligent, incredibly nervous, and completely vulnerable. If the actor was too confident, the joke died. If the actor was just acting scared without real depth, the character became a flat cartoon. Brooks saw that Wilder's awkward intensity was not a mistake. It was the entire engine of the performance. Wilder could look like a man folding under extreme pressure while his brain kept working at lightning speed. Brooks drew a hard line and fought the backer. He protected Wilder's unique energy. and Brooks was proven right in the loudest way possible. The movie was released, the performance became legendary, and Gene Wilder received an Academy Award nomination for the role. The very traits that made the money men nervous, the shaky vulnerability, the hyper-awareness, the fragile panic, were exactly what the audience fell in love with. To fully grasp the magnitude of what he achieved, you have to realize that every element of his public face was a victory over the unpredictable chaos of his real life. When a child is told that his own behavior might kill his mother, the trauma embeds itself deep in the nervous system. The heavy guilt he carried about feeling happy while she was ill meant that his comedy could never just be light or easy. It always had a desperate pulse beating right beneath it. He was trying to buy a few seconds of light in a terribly heavy day. That is why his humor drew people in instead of pushing them away. He was communicating through tone, projecting a need to calm, help, and soothe. This deep need to manage the emotional temperature of a room made him a profoundly observant performer. He watched faces. He sensed the delicate line between too much energy and just enough. Because his very first laughs were meant to save a life, his comedy was always relational. He read the air around him. This is exactly what Mel Brooks recognized when he fought to keep him in The Producers. Brooks saw a performer who did not just deliver punchlines, but who allowed real, quivering human feeling to remain completely visible in the room. It is easy to assume that great artists simply follow a straight line to their destiny. But the forces meant to improve Wilder often failed him, while the places meant for play actually saved him. His family's attempt to give him a polished Hollywood education resulted in isolation and abuse. Yet, the pain of that rejection clarified his life. The military school tried to force him into a rigid mold, and when it cracked, the true performer stepped out. He walked away from institutions that demanded he harden himself and walked toward the theater, an art form that asked him to remain open. And when he reached the stage, he did not just rely on raw trauma. He put in the grueling, unglamorous work to master his craft. His time in England at the Bristol Old Vic taught him how to physically manifest his internal tension. Fencing was not a quirky hobby. It was the exact physical discipline he needed to keep his chaotic comedy grounded. By the time he returned to the United States for Stanislavski training, he possessed an incredibly rare combination of skills. He had the profound emotional depth of a boy who grew up managing a life-or-death crisis, combined with the elite physical precision of a competitive athlete. All of this power was finally channeled through the elegant, carefully chosen shield of his stage name. Jerome Silberman created Gene Wilder so he could survive the public eye without handing over his entire private soul. The name drew a clean line. The private circle got to keep Jerome. The whole world got to love Gene. When you look at the entire picture, the myth of the accidental genius completely falls apart. You see the immigrant father who traded the chaos of Russia for the quiet grind of Milwaukee, making a safe space for his son to grow. You see the 8-year-old boy turning his panic into a medical treatment for his mother. You see the teenager fleeing abuse and finding salvation in the theater. You see the dedicated student mastering a combat sport to gain perfect control over his own body. You see the young actor refusing to use his birth name, choosing instead to build an identity out of the literature he loved. And you see the brilliant artist surviving a brutal Hollywood boardroom fight because his director knew exactly how rare he was. Gene Wilder did not just happen. He was forged. He took the terror, the grief, the discipline, and the sheer force of his own will, and he built a man who could make the entire world smile.